All right. My incredibly gravelly voice. Should be a good day. I'm not. I mean, literally, it's all smoke. That's right. I want all the smoke. Good afternoon, everybody. I hereby call to order, it is Monday, May 22nd, 3:38 p.m., and I hereby call to order the Budget Committee of the Memphis City Council. Ms. Owens, would you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Johnson, Councilman Warren,
Present.
Chair Carlisle.
President, Chair observes a quorum. We have 6 items today, predominantly city grants and agencies. First up, the Downtown Memphis Commission. Mr. Young, your name and title, and the floor is yours.
My name is Paul Young. I serve as the president and CEO of Downtown Memphis Commission. So today what I wanted to do is go through, we already brought our budget before you all, I guess about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It'll be downstairs in full council in another week or two. But one of the things that came out of that meeting was a request to come and give you an overview of some of our other sister boards. There also was a request for a wish list of different things we'd like to see downtown, so we'll include that as well. So I'm going to run through it relatively quickly. Not going to go deep into each of the budgets, but I want to give you the broad overview, and the information is there for you at the end if you have questions. So I'm going to go. All right.
Mr. Young, if you'll just give me one second. First off, excuse me. Let the record show Councilwoman Easter Thomas is present and would like to be recognized. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. President Young. Chair, I just want to make a statement that out of the abundance of caution, I will be recusing myself from the grants and agencies budget, as well as Memphis River Parks Partnership, and I wanted to make that said before we started all of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. President Young, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So just high-level overview, there are 5 different boards that operate under the DMC umbrella, and so I'll go through each one quickly. And DMC board is the board that obviously leads the staff of Downtown Memphis Commission, and our staff staffs each of these 5 entities. So just our high-level overview, these are some of our priorities at making us safer, cleaner, more welcoming streets, adding vibrancy, reducing blight, marketing and promoting downtown Memphis to include a positive message for our community. And then I always like to point out that there are no city or county tax dollars that go into the organization. It's actually funded by the Central Business Improvement District tax, and that is an assessment that is paid over and above the city and county taxes. Just quickly around the boundaries, as you can see, the colored areas up north to the Wolf River, down south to Crump. You can use Danny Thomas as one of our eastern boundaries, and then we have the medical district that's also included. And then you also see the extra territory that we have for Center City Revenue Finance Corporation, which is primarily around pilots. We can do pilots within the parkways. And so I'll dive right into the board overviews. I talked about the CBID assessment for the DMC board. This is the entity that drives the vision for all of our entities. And we have 2 primary metrics: increasing the number of people in downtown and increasing the commercial property values. This is just a high-level overview of our budget and how we spend our dollars that come in. Safety and hospitality is what gets the bulk of our dollars. That's followed by beautification with our clean and green team. And then we have planning and development, as well as marketing and community engagement. I apologize, I didn't introduce my colleague to the left of me, my CFO, Penelope Springer, and also behind me is Penelope Houston, who is our VP of Marketing and Communications. 2 Penelopes, and I didn't know any before I got here. So here's our budget. Like I said, we presented this a couple of weeks ago, so I won't go deep into detail on it. $5.1 million, and you can go back and look at that. So we have 4 additional boards: incentive allocation, design review, mobility, and parking. I'll talk about each of these as we go through the boards. Center City Revenue Finance Corporation, this is the one that you probably hear about the most as we talk about pilots pretty often as major projects come through. That happens through CCRFC. This is an industrial development board. Much of the work that you hear about is related to pilots. We also have the ability to do tax increment financing, TIFs. We also have the ability to issue bonds. It's also the entity that manages the pilot extension rent fund. And so this just gives you a view of what we spend money on through CCRFC revenues that come in. So the revenues for CCRFC are primarily the pilot fees. And so our budget for CCRFC is dependent upon how many projects we expect to close, which honestly, we don't know in a given year. We don't know when a project will actually close, so we try to give our best estimates. We take those dollars, and those dollars are used from the pilot fees to transfer into Center City Development Corporation, which I'll talk about later, which has a number of incentives. We call it our Community Benefit Fund. We also transfer to DMC to cover gaps, since we spend a significant amount of staff time on this entity, and then professional fees, usually legal fees. We also have recently been receiving tourism development zone surcharge fees. So these are hotel projects. I think we have Peabody and the Sheraton are the two that are active right now. And then I mentioned the pilot extension rent fund or fund rents. Those fund mobility projects, garages, and public infrastructure in downtown. This is the budget. Like I said, this is an estimate that's based on what we expect to come in, with the exception of the pilot extensions. We know that those are dollars that have been committed by the projects that are in that fund, and the bulk of those are used to pay debt service on the projects that are already underway. Running through it quickly, Downtown Mobility Authority. This is where we manage a number of garages in downtown Memphis. We take those revenues to maintain the garages and continue the work to ensure that parking is possible in downtown Memphis. And so, simply said, once the revenue comes in, we use it to pay for garage maintenance, and we're also looking at mobility programs. We're now starting to fund some things like Explore Bike Share and other mobility programs in downtown. And so here's the budget. It outlines the budget for each of our garages that we manage. Now, I want to make clear that we don't manage all the garages, so if there are complaints in garages, we have to make sure that it's ours, because there are others in downtown Memphis, but the ones that we do manage are listed here. Center City Development Corporation, this is actually a nonprofit 501c3 that is under our umbrella that we staff. And I mentioned it earlier that the Center City Revenue Finance Corporation dollars, as they come in, we take those funds and we put them into CCDC to do more incentives. And so this is how we do development loans, exterior improvement grants, retail tenant improvement grants, good neighbor grants, pre-development grants, as well as sidewalk grants. And so I like to always remind people that those larger projects that are getting those tax benefits through the pilot are actually funding a lot of the vibrancy that happens in downtown Memphis, because of those smaller projects are made possible through those pilot fees that are paid. And this essentially outlines what I just said. The incentives are paid. Also make clear that we just took on the Mighty Lights, so the bridge lights are now being managed through Center City Development Corporation. Previously, they were managed by a private entity, but we've taken that on for the good of downtown. And so here's the budget for that. And then the Design Review Board, the budget is easy on this because there is no budget for it. We just do the work. As projects receive public incentives in downtown Memphis, this board, this volunteer board, approves the design to make sure it fits the culture, the character, and the vibe that we want to give off in downtown in the respective areas. And so there is no budget for it, so no need for that. Lastly, funding wish list. So one of the things that was requested at our last meeting was to talk to you all about what things we can do to make downtown more attractive. How can council partner with us and all the other entities that are active downtown? And so I'll just start here, sidewalk improvements. One of the things that is really, really difficult is to have all of these major attractions, beautiful projects like the Tom Lee Park renovation, which is going to be amazing, world-class asset. And when you look at the corridors that connect to that asset, this is how they look. And these are the responsibility of property owners. And so we actually have a fund that we've allocated where we will match up to $5,000 for property owners to improve their sidewalks. However, it's still not happening. And so there's a couple of things that we think need to be done in order to address it. One is enforcement, ensuring that we are holding people's feet to the fire, and that's going to be a partnership with the city to do that. But then two, how do we kickstart it? How do we go ahead and get some work done to make things more attractive? We always talk about, some of the negative activity we see. Blight is one of the things that contributes to the negative activity. And if we can improve the corridors, you'll see more people walking, which in turn makes things safer. So we would like to request, or for your consideration, $750,000 to kickstart that work and do some work in downtown Memphis to improve the corridors on the sidewalks. Another idea, this is something that we've already started. There are a number of alleyways that we have made more attractive using public art to make them more traversable and improve the experience. There are still some alleys that could use this type of energy and improvement. So we believe a light touch request would be to utilize $250,000 to consider additional alleys that could use this type of vibrancy. And then lastly, and this is something, Councilman Jones, you mentioned this to me when I first got to DMC. Actually, you may not remember, but you talked to, you do remember. All right. You talked about Denver and how clean Denver was, or is. It is. Yeah. All right. Well, one of the things we found out about Denver is that they have a staff of, I can't remember the number of staff members, but they spend about $2.5 million a year on their staffing for cleaning up their downtown area. And so we have about 3 people on our staff currently that are directly responsible. We've just engaged some contractors to help us add some more capacity that are down here every day of the week now, cleaning up in downtown Memphis. So we're adding capacity, but there still could be more. And so $250,000 would allow us to add more contractors to do more cleaning, to cut the weeds in the cracks of the sidewalks, even the ones that we aren't repaving. There are things that can be done to make downtown more attractive. And again, as we talk about safety, this is one of the important things that we can do, make things more attractive to make more people come out, and then in turn make things safer. So I'll stop there, open it up for any questions that you guys have at this moment.
I've got, I should scoot the mic closer for today. I've got one question, which is, and it may not be for you, maybe more for Alan Wade, which is, right now it's mutual cooperation with you and the city engineer on enforcement of sidewalks. Mm-hmm. I'm going to explore some sort of, kind of like with the partnership, it may be city-owned, but they get the complaints, like with downtown, maybe city-owned, but you get the complaints, but you don't have full authority, right? So we've got to find a way to get some sort of MOU or outright ordinance that allows the opportunity, and again, this one, because I don't know what our legal authority would be, basically, because you're formed by charter, but to give you the authority of the engineering or the city of Memphis for sidewalk and certain code enforcement items in order to push that forward, because Manny's got 300 square miles to look after. Downtown's important, but at the end of the day, I mean, they're just full, right? And you guys have to be responsible for everything that goes down here, whether you technically are or not. So we got to figure out a way to give you guys some sort of more teeth to be more forward, other than just filing with with Steve Barlow and going to environmental court, right? Like we've got to. So, and that goes for Robert too, because I know we've had a lot of cases that we put into receivership. So that's one for me to do that. I wanted to get looked into sooner rather than later. I'm not personally opposed to putting some funds or more additional general funds towards the downtown area, but you have one key difference that the rest of the city doesn't. Even though we've pledged a lot of funds, like the pilot extension fund and its backup went to fund that facility for, the mobility authority and all those things. So right. We're running out of things to pledge for. So where I'm going with this is are you open to at least considering looking at the CBIT assessment to get some of those general funds or operating things like enhanced cleaning if we look at CIP dollars.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're certainly open to the dialogue. Are you? And when you say that, do you mean looking at the CBIT assessment at its current rate?
Well, I mean, I think the reality is you've got a budget on it, and what's hard for me, and I don't represent the downtown area, although clearly I'm a stakeholder, but what's hard for me, and where I'm sure when I walk through the next business meeting, I'll take grief for it, is it's hard to look at taking general fund dollars or CIP dollars from other areas to help downtown businesses when the downtown businesses, specifically the CBID, have their own mechanism to fund their own help. Now, they can't issue CIP dollars, but we can. So it's kind of like, is there a way that we can meet in the middle? And if you want to take, when we don't meet for another Jonesy, when do we meet next? 3 weeks?
Yes, the 13th.
I know what they're likely to say, but I'd be curious to know what downtown business owners would say, because they can fund their own help, right? I mean, they can't complain to the city about it being dirty downtown when they have a mechanism to fund their own way to get out of it, right? Especially since a lot of our large office users, apartment users are all under pilots. There's no real big mechanism other than that assessment. So I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but I'd like you to consider that, because I would have to make a case to 6 other people that we can reallocate money that could go to improving Whitehaven to come downtown. Although I believe both need to happen, you just happen to have a unique tool that Whitehaven doesn't. So those are my general thoughts. Like I said, you and I have talked privately, and I agree publicly. 1, you need more enforcement, and 2, we can't spend the type of money that we've spent, $60-70 million on the river, the Tiger grant, and all of the connectors look like garbage unless they've had a developer. And the kicker is that most of what's left won't be redeveloped in any significant way. So you're unlikely to get that to happen if you can't get the enforcement. And even if you get the enforcement, I mean, even on some of those connecting paths, I don't know that we can find those owners easily. Right. So, those are my general comments. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah.
Chairman Jones.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Young. Do we have a report, I don't see anything in here, about the total indebtedness that the various corporations, CCRFC, that are out there?
Yeah, that should be a part of our audit, so we can certainly get that information to you.
Okay. And then I'm looking at can you expound? I'm looking at, there was one page where one of the entities seemed to be running. Okay, I'm looking at the CCDC net loss for fiscal year 23 and budgeted for fiscal year 24. Can you expound on that, please?
Yeah. We talked about this morning. I just asked you to refresh my memory. So what's included in that planning and development number are previous commitments from earlier years that are being carried over. And so if you look down at the bottom, there are dollars that are available to cover that amount. The challenge is dependent on when that developer actually closes on those projects. And so those are holdovers that hadn't been closed yet, but we're still holding funds from previous years to cover those amounts.
Okay, and so absent those, or when those expenditures are made, it's not looking like, it's not one of those things where we're just carrying this deficit and it's correct, sort of like an albatross around the neck of that.
Right, because there are dollars that are available to cover it.
Okay, and then can you talk about, I think that you talked about transfers from one to the other. How much of that is taking place? And because what I'm looking at, too, I didn't have a chance to add all of them up. How are the revenues, particularly the operating income from the Downtown Mobility Authority, how those surpluses or incomes being used?
So DMA. So on DMA, the reason you see a surplus is because in this fiscal year, We don't actually know how much revenue is going to come in from the mobility center, so we estimated it.
Okay.
But at some level, we're going to start paying some of those dollars back to the Center City Revenue Finance Corporation. We just didn't account for it in this fiscal year since this will be the first year of operation.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the overall, if I look at, for instance, 250 Peabody, they are projected to have a 400, that's not tied to the mobility center though, is it?
No,
Okay,
that's not.
so if we add up 800,000 forget the mobility center, but $500,000 for 250 Peabody, First Park and Second Street 300, how are those revenues being
Yeah,
respent?
So I'm going to ask my
reinvested?
CFO because she was just telling me something. But what I will say is that one of the things that we found is that we have significant deferred maintenance on many of our garages, and so that is the next frontier. As you can see in this budget, we have begun, this is a new phenomenon where we're actually making money on our garages. For the past, prior to 2 or 3 years ago, we weren't having operating income. It was always a deficit. We've changed management and we've changed the way we've managed our garages. They're now generating revenue, and we're trying to plow that money back into making the improvements in the garages. So the money, as it accumulates, that's what it's going to be going towards. And I'm going to ask the CFO if she has any additional thoughts.
Yes, Penelope Springer, CFO, DMC. So if you look at that first column, Park and Authority, you do see a red deficit, and there's a $500,000 in there for mobility initiatives. And so those are contributions that we make for the VIA Groove on Demand that we share with MATA, as well as supporting Explore Bike Share and other mobility transit initiatives. So some of those profits would go toward that as well.
Okay, and so, Ms. Young, as you talked about with this capital improvement reserve, would that be some of the deferred maintenance?
That's some of it, yes. So we just started this capital improvement reserve, I think 2 years ago, 2022, FY22. So yeah, we now have the ability to start at least taking that 15%, and any additional amount, we certainly want to continue to build up that reserve. We want to make sure we're putting at least 15% on an ongoing basis.
Okay, and then I see, if we go back and, we don't have it in front of us, if we go back and look at the indebtedness, we do have enough money to carry the debt service for everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all those would be revenue bonds though, or revenue in.
Yeah, so the largest one that we have is a bank loan that is for the mobility center, and we do have the revenues to cover it from the pilot extension rent fund. That was what you guys approved just 2 years ago.
Right. Okay. Okay. Just wanted to, if you could just provide us just an overview of the indebtedness that's currently out there.
Okay.
I think that the council's going forward, rainy day type of scenario, we need to know if anything that the city would be on the hook for. It's one of those things to where we can have revenue bonds and the revenues could be dedicated from those sources, but the city could not afford to basically have a default over here someplace,
Right,
and not think that it would not affect its overall credit worthiness going forward.
So you want to know the total indebtedness, and specifically indebtedness that has the full faith and credit or some backstop from the city?
Both. Let me just say both. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let the record show Councilwoman Logan and Councilwoman Robinson are here. All right, thank you, Ms. Young.
All right, thank you all.
Benelli. Moving on to the Memphis River Parks Partnership. can start.
Great,
All right, if you could get your name and your title, and then the floor is yours.
great. I'm Terry Daniels, Chairman, Memphis River Parks Partnerships, 6004 Manor Cove, Memphis, Tennessee, 38120. And with me today is
Art Davis. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer of Memphis River Parks Partnership, 2261 Monroe, Memphis 38103.
Thank you. So good to be with you all today again and talk about our budget. One of the things that I want to call your attention to is this mission statement. It guides everything that we do at Memphis River Parks Partnership. And, you know, we think about Riverfront as more than just a collection of bike lanes and parks and green space, but we try to figure out is how do we transform use the power of the river to transform and telegraph the ambitions of our city, and let that start at the riverfront. The solution that we believe is not only getting people outside and engaged in connected, catalytic, fun riverfronts, but also engaging those people while they're there and providing opportunities for citizens to engage in our riverfront, and that's what we try to do. So the problem statement, funding for direct park expenses only, and that is one of the things I want to make sure that we focus on today is all the funding that you guys give us goes to direct park expenses, and these are expenses related to the maintenance, operations, landscaping, security, and programming of our riverfront parks. How do we use our riverfront to build a transformative riverfront that will produce new value for Memphis? One of the things of all the improvements that we've made along our riverfront, whether that be the improvements going on in Tomley Park, River Garden, also Fourth Bluff, also the Cobblestone Project, is how do we build new value for our city and enhance not only the things that happen along our riverfront, but how does that riverfront improvements and those things that we're doing there become catalytic to create value beyond the bluff. So services, we have so many services to name. Not only do we maintain 5 miles of riverfront, but that is from all the way from Mud Island to Chickasaw Heritage Park, but we also have engagements with our community. That is the Grizzlies watch parties, tree plantings, public art installations. All of these things are designed to not only enhance what we do at the parks in themselves, let that be something for people to get green space and enjoyment, but also how do we engage those people in ways that reach them, but also bring people to our riverfront so that they can take advantage of all the things that you guys have invested in. Today, we're requesting $3 million, almost $100,000, which will cover 75% of the direct park expenses and account for 58% of the partnership's total operating budget. And if you look at here, direct park expenses, annual expenses are about $4.1 million. That's 78% of the total budget. 74% or almost 75% of that is funded by the city of Memphis. Indirect expenses is 1.1, which is 22% of our budget. And those are funded through a collection of parking revenues, event rentals, those type of things, docking fees, and that gives us a total annual expenses of about 5.3. As you can see here, the breakdown of the direct park expenses and how those collect. A couple other things that I want to make sure that we are drawing our attention to is not only do we have direct park expenses, but we go far and beyond of that. In the addendum that we provided for you, as you can see, our commitment from the city has pretty much remained flat from 2014 to 2020 and has really saved the city a serious amount of money Whereas if that amount had grown, you can see on the second page says savings to the city of Memphis that the city, if it was under a 3% scenario where there were annual increase, it would have been about $1.8 million. Under a 5% scenario, that would be about $4.2 million. So we've saved the city a significant amount of money. If we just want to look at the value that we're getting from MRPP on an investment scenario, between FY19 and FY23, almost $55 million of investment in city-owned properties that have given you improvements at Fourth Bluff Park, River Garden, the River Line, and then also coming online. I'm sure a lot of people were down there either this weekend or 2 weekends ago at the improvements at Tomley Park. So, all of those spaces that we're working to not only transform and enhance our riverfront, but also bring more value to you and the city of Memphis. If you look, one of the things that I'm very, very proud of is not only River Garden and has been in so many publications that we can't even name, national publications that's gotten national press for our city, and we want to continue doing that. Not only setting the bar very high, but also being ambitious in the things that we create. We think the improvements at Tom Lee will catapult our city to where Tom Lee Park is the reason that they're going to visit. River Garden already, or people are visiting because of River Garden already. And as you go by that park any time of the day, you see people always there, people using it, and we want that to happen. One of the things that I want to call your attention to as well is of our CIP projects. We get the question all the time about Mud Island and what's going on in Mud Island. The monies that you all allocated are being very well used to not only make sure that we have access and security in Mud Island, but also that as we prepare and look at possible tenants for Mud Island in the future, that people can get there safely. We reduce the amount of claims that we've had from trips and falls and slips. So basically handling the basic necessities of operating that venue as it is today, as we wait a idea that comes that not only uses the facilities there, but also transforms kind of how we envision Mud Island as we think about it today. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Councilwoman Johnson. Please let the record reflect that Councilwoman Swearingen Washington is here. I've got Dr. Warren and then Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you let us know what our current total docking fees were for the past couple of years and what your projections are?
This year, they are projected to be close to $600,000. It's very hard, even though our fiscal year ends in a month, to come up with that projection. There are cancellations almost weekly. As a matter of fact, in looking at what the projections are for this next fiscal year, we're still waiting on docking schedules from different cruise lines and what that would look like. I don't have the previous numbers off the top of my head.
What are the weekly cancellations from?
Either because they choose based on their docking, their passenger counts. I can't really tell you why they canceled their dockings, but there are cancellations.
Have you asked them why they're canceling their dockings?
I really haven't dived into that.
I think that might be something for us to know. I mean, if they're canceling their dockings because people are worried about getting mugged, that would be one thing we'd like to know. If they're canceling their dockings because they can't fill their boats to go up and down the river, that's a different thing.
Sure.
So are we getting the cancellations and other places aren't? I think we need to know that because I think we spent a fair amount of money on that dock, and we sure would like those people to come and enjoy Memphis. So,
well, I think a lot of the cancellations, just to clarify it just a little bit, some of them, like American Cruise Line, they may have 7 ships. So they just are canceling one particular ship for the entire year. There are other single trips, which I would assume are based on passengers more than the other, but we have not received any complaints or concerns with the security at Beale Street Landing or at Greenbelt, the two main dockings.
That
But I'll
sounds great.
certainly reach out to them.
Yeah, just reach out, and I think that's an important thing to be able to say, we checked, that's not an issue. People like to come to Memphis, it's got to do with the river cruise business, not our dock.
Certainly will do that. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
If you get a straight answer out of a corporation like that, then Art deserves an award. But Jeff makes a fair point. What I'd like to see, just because we haven't seen it in so long, it was more important when the debt was where it was, and so it was more, it had more oversight to it. But I'm curious, when the last time, do we track, or is it Memphis Tourism that tracks kind of the dockings, the impact, what's going on, because it's grown and grown and grown and grown. I was just curious last time anybody did any sort of financial impact report on it.
We have not done that.
I mean,
Tourism probably has.
Yeah, it costs money to do them. I'm not saying we need to, but it seems to be a continually strong business for us, and that dock has taken a lot of bad press over the year. But at the end of the day, it was a great investment for the city, and it always covered its debt service. There were a couple of hitches with some construction, but other than that, it's worked out well.
And I would also like our CFO to talk about not only Councilman Carlisle. We used to have one ship on the river, and now we have.
So we have two consistent cruise lines. We have American Queen Voyages, which used to be our American Queen Steamboat Company, and we have ACL, which is the American Cruise Line. Viking has a schedule on, although they have postponed their schedule. Again, one of the cancellations, I think theirs is more on construction, but until July. And that's the latest update that I have for them. But there will be three docks or three cruise lines docking here in Memphis.
Yeah, and it took them years to get there. You can't operate, and I learned this, Carol told me this, and I didn't know this, but you can't be a foreign entity and operate on intercoastal waterways. So they couldn't even build a ship until they got a domain entity domain, domiciled here rather. So, and that took time. So
and Viking will be big for our city.
Yeah.
I mean, Viking, you're talking about voyages that are not like $3,000-$4,000 cruises. We're talking about $15,000-$30,000 cruises. So they are bringing substantial amount of patrons that are here to enjoy our city and spend money. So it's going to be significant once they get that out the ground.
Since you guys are here and we're wrapping up, obviously we don't have any sort of numbers. When do you anticipate being able to give a post-mortem from Memphis in May? Are we thinking, I think it's going to be, I'm assuming after budget season, which I don't love. I was down there. I'm wildly concerned.
Councilman Carlisle, we hear you. Per terms of the agreement we have with Memphis in May, any damages or anything that has taken place during the month of May will be assessed in June. Memphis in May does not leave the park until May 27th.
The Great River Run next, or some event?
Within the park.
Yeah, that's not within the park. That's on Riverside Drive. So in the month of June, we anticipate the assessment to start in the month of June, and then also from there, a report will be generated, acting with the city's third-party mediator, and then we would anticipate making that public as soon as that it is ready.
So, as you can tell, I was there last weekend. Yeah, I saw her walking down, and we both looked. I looked at him. We looked at the ground of mud, and he kept walking, and I kept laughing. But I think we were very fortunate for Beale Street Music Festival. The weather was nice. Unfortunately, the crowds were probably smaller, which if you were there was great because you move around. But the setup was beautiful. I heard more positive feedback about people's ability to move through the park and go under the canopy and how it felt different. It felt great. There was shade, and so that worked. I think that really, really worked well. I've been on a barbecue team since 2008. We've competed with the big dogs ever since. We're not just an amateur team, although it's a bunch of amateurs. And I say that to say that we get feedback from all of the pros to all of the party teams to all of the corporate sponsors. I say this as somebody who supports the River Park and Memphis in May, that I think Beale Street Music Fest can survive its setup. I thought it worked very well. I thought they could have put more bodies in there and been just fine. I strongly, and we'll have more conversations, but I ran into a former board member, there is no way that the barbecue festival can survive in that park going forward. And there are places that I know that the partnership in the city has offered that still exist today, that would still benefit downtown and check all the boxes. And most of the large teams that I floated that idea to said, wait a minute, I can have a river view and a city view on the river, or I can have a downtown spot. So this next off season is going to be a real interesting conversation. But the amount of heavy equipment that had to move within and out of the park in order to make the barbecue festival work was way different than the amount of, and I have to be honest, and I know I'm going on a digression, so I'll stop so we can move on, but in my time, even if it had been the old park, it was probably some of the most damage I've seen just to the turf alone. I mean, the amount of heavy equipment through certain areas was unreal. There are a couple spots that were 3-4 feet in the ground. Day one on move-in, they busted a water main. So anyway, there are better places to do it that still benefit the downtown area, and so it should be an interesting summer. But they keep it downtown and they keep barbecue teams happy. So,
Councilman Carlisle, we look forward to working with the mediator and also our construction manager to assess damages. And then we look more forward to our opening weekend on Labor Day weekend of 2023, where the park will be
Very
ready
excited.
and delivered to Memphians, something they can all come view and behold.
Tyree, that's why you're the chair. All right, we have Johnson and Jones. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I was listening to the presentation. It said the partnership 990 is attached. Did I miss it?
We did. I could get copies of it. It was over 100 pages, I believe. So instead of making copies, we'll provide them either digitally or printed for you.
Okay, you can probably.
It's 100 pages.
Okay.
We'll get it.
Would you like the full version? Or
Executive version will
Okay.
do a summary,
I will get that out.
basically.
Yeah,
If
and
I
then
need additional
send a link
information.
for the total thing.
We'll get you, Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you.
Chairman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, welcome. I have a question, and you may have to jog my memory on this. And when we were talking about the docks, was there not something, and I may be speaking to my colleagues about this as well, from Accelerate Memphis for docks?
Okay, here's what I found online.
Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate our help.
Councilman Jones, or Chairman Jones, you're correct. There is something from Accelerate Memphis on the docks project, but that's a city-run project. I would probably punt that over to COO.
Okay, yeah, if you would.
Yeah, remember, just generally speaking, even outside the docks, the partnership and the RDC before it was a facilitator of projects and not the project manager, so to speak. I think people often forget that.
So yes, there is a Harbor Docks project that is underway. We're finalizing design, and we've began some pre-work, but it is still ongoing. What exactly is your question? I think I may have missed it.
Well, no, it's more so an update. My memory, like I said, it was a little, couldn't remember every particular project that was part of Accelerate Memphis, but I seem to have recalled something along those lines. And the fact that we were discussing the docks, the prospect, or I guess it's been postponed a bit, Viking coming, I thought it was a pretty, I was excited when I heard about Viking coming here. And since we were talking about MMRP, this would have been this just happened to be the point where it sparked my memory when we talked about that. So wanted to have an update on that to see how that was coming.
The last information I have is that we have run into some cost overruns, and so we are value engineering the project, but we will be happy to bring back to you where we are with it. But we're we're in the final stages of the design phase, and we should be moving forward really soon.
Okay, if you could just provide something, that, it doesn't have to be during budget, but the fact that we were having this discussion here, perhaps during one of our regular meetings in Public Works, if that's the department that it'll fall under, just an update on that. Thanks. Thank you.
And I just
Thank you,
also with the project timeline.
Yes,
When
indeed, yes.
that comes on. All right, colleagues, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck over these next few weeks.
That's where I saw you.
I mean, winning the lottery. All right. Up next, we have the Memphis Metropolitan Land Bank Authority, formerly known as the Blight Authority of Memphis, MMLBA. Had to go with a longer name, huh? BAM was too easy. Had to go full government.
Yeah, all the way.
Good afternoon.
Name and title, and whenever you're ready.
All right. Mike Harris, President and CEO, Memphis Metropolitan Land Bank Authority, 170 North Main, 6th floor, Memphis, Tennessee, 38103.
Marcus Ward, General Counsel for Memphis Metropolitan Land Bank Authority. Marcus D. Ward, PLLC, 3385 Airways Boulevard, Suite 229, Memphis, Tennessee, 38116.
All right. Good afternoon, council members. I want to say thank you for this opportunity to present our budget to you. A little bit about Memphis Metropolitan Land Bank Authority. This organization is formerly known as Blight Authority of Memphis, also known as BAM. The nonprofit has been in existence for 7 years. Our 2021 990 is actually complete now. Our audit just finished and it was favorable, and we're getting all of that updated, and we start our new audit in August, so we won't be late with that anymore. In years past, we've received $875,000 total from the city of Memphis for funding for our programs. And that funding came in $400,000 in the last fiscal year, $400,000 the fiscal year before, and $75,000 the fiscal year before that. With that, our mission is to transform blighted parcels into economic opportunities. We understand that across our community, blighted parcels are plaguing our inner city communities like no other. We have, under TCA statute, a unique ability to protect and support our communities that need it the most. And that's with our discretionary disposition policies and how we're allowed to acquire land through tax sale purposes, how we're able to transfer land with city governments, county governments, so that we can move land and actually start redeveloping in an equitable fashion. We also are a land bank. We get to, under the statute, we get to hold land for nonprofits. The statute allows for for-profits as well, for us to hold land so that they can assemble parcels and we can develop these inner city communities a lot faster. Our goal is simply to improve the quality of life for all of our inner city communities so that we can eventually no longer have to have this agency to do this work. As when we talk about our list of services to be provided, what you see before you, these are the specifics to what we will actually be purchasing, but how it rolls into a higher level of services that we're offering. We're talking administrative operations, we're talking the acquisition of land, we're talking the disposition of land, and all associated fees with holding land as a land depository. Again, we're asking for $400,000 again this year, no change from the previous year. That covers 62% of our budget. And as you see, what we're asking of the city is under property acquisition, contract services, payroll expenses, and community engagement. And with that, I am available for questions.
Councilman Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. At one point, we were in the process of trying to get an attorney general opinion about how we could work better with our county trustee.
Yes, sir.
And I was wondering, is that opinion still pending? Where are we in that process?
That opinion is still pending, but I will defer to General Counsel for that.
And perhaps could you explain to me again and my fellow council members why you're asking for that and what the issue is that is being involved with the need for an attorney general's opinion?
The attorney general's opinion, Councilman Warren, is based on one section of the land bank statute that allows the land bank authority to obtain property or acquire property in tax sales by placing the minimum bid for those taxes, which is going to be the taxes. The position that the trustee has taken is that wherever there is a tax sale and the possibility of a bid occurring in those tax sales, the trustee has and as best as I can say, the duty to make sure that that equity is delivered to the delinquent taxpayer. In other words, if we're acquiring property and the property is $5,000 worth of delinquency, but someone wants to bid for that property at $10,000, there's a possibility if that bid is successful and the money is submitted, that the $5,000 above the taxes would go to the person that owes the property. So therefore, what the trustee's position is that $5,000 in equity that would belong to that delinquent taxpayer should be paid and should be available to them, and we should not be allowed to place the minimum or the preemptive bid and take the property just for the amount of the taxes. So that does not, and I say from a practical perspective, if I may indulge just for a second, and I've said this to other bodies, I understand the position, but I've been in the business of acquiring government property for over 20 years, and very rarely does the government get involved in acquiring property where there's profit to be made from it. If there were profit involved, then it probably wouldn't be blighted in the first place. So one of our issues with them is that, but the other issue is a standing issue on whether or not the trustee can actually raise that issue, because that would be something that the taxpayer would actually raise and not the trustee. And the third issue that we have with that is that the taxpayer is not without remedy in the situation, because if, say, for instance, a person comes along and purchases property and is successful with the bid, there is nothing that prohibits that taxpayer, delinquent taxpayer, from going to that same person and making the offer to sell the property to them for the amount that the taxpayer bought it for. There's also a redemption right that that person has as well. So there are several remedies that the taxpayer has, and that's why we felt the need to have Attorney General flesh this out rather than try to get into too much of a litigation issue with him.
So as we're looking at trying to, say we got a block, it's got 5 blighted properties on it and 4 other properties, but you know, it's sort of like they tend to come up at different times to being sold. I thought part of the problem we had was we weren't really able to get all of those coming up as a group to allow you to develop a way to fix that block. Now, how does this remedy work for that? I mean, is there a reason that we can't have all of those come up at the same time and they've got to come up first come, first serve?
I think what Dr. Warren's saying is oftentimes there is a guiding statute that says when something is eligible for that. What you often find though is whether by just missing it or choice is the discretion in which the trustee uses to deem when a property should go or should not go. And I gave this example last week of 339 South Front, which had been delinquent for over 13 years in both Shelby and city county taxes and never went, where it should have gone 7 years prior to that. So I think he's trying to understand how that process works.
The selection process that the trustee has is discretionary to the trustee. But what I would say from an experience of acquiring property for other agencies, a lot of times one thing that may affect the ability to acquire property is just notice. Because you can't go in and acquire property. The trustee has a little more discretionary authority than development agencies do. But if we were going to go in and acquire a site, particularly under redevelopment plan, we have to give that property owner notice. And a lot of times these property owners can't be found. Sometimes they're deceased and the estates were never opened in probate court, so there's no way to track them. Sometimes they're corporations that have been dissolved, and you go to the Secretary of State looking for them and they can't be dissolved. So you have to go through a lot.
So that mean that property's on hold indefinitely and no one will ever own it?
They're trying to find clean title.
We try to get clear title to it. There are ways that we can do that. We can do clear, quiet title actions, but even with those, we have to have a certain amount of due diligence that we have to exert, because judges in Chancery Court, where a lot of those actions are tried, do not want to all of a sudden divest title from one entity to another unless they're absolutely sure that every effort has been taken to go through the process of trying to notify their property owner. So that takes a little bit more time. And as I would start by what I said at the beginning, it's discretionary to the trustee and what their practices are. I can't speak, but I do know that from the standpoint of other agencies I've dealt with, notice can be an issue. It's not an issue that's impossible, but it takes a little bit more time and diligence to do.
Okay, I guess I'm still trying to figure out.
It's super complicated,
When
I
it's,
promise.
when it's discretionary, does that mean previously it's been working in a different way at a different discretion for some reason? Because it's always been the same way. You've been doing this for years.
I haven't done it for the trustee, but I can talk about it from a housing authority perspective. I can talk about it from a CRA perspective. I've worked for them. When we acquire property, there's one method that we use, and I can just give you an example if you want to know. If I have a property and I can't find someone, I'm going to go through every search engine I have. I have 6 of them that I use. And if I can't find that person, that statute allows me to go in and actually file a notice, serve the people through publication, have publication go throughout the nation. Then I go back to court and say, I've done everything I can do. The court will award the property. The trustee may not have that same practice. So I can't speak to how long or what issues, affect what they do. But there are remedies. It just takes more time than it would, in ordinary circumstances.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And when something's sold on the courthouse steps, that basically clears the way. So it's problematic. I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of this, and you mentioned the duty, and that seems to be the interpretation issue is the trustee's interpretation of what their constitutional authority and duty is to the tax, I'll say, I guess, to the tax base, or rather the entity versus perhaps just the right to, hold, maintain, and discharge. What are the, yeah. Yes, Councilwoman Robinson.
I know that this is very complicated, but I just need a simple answer. So the city of Memphis allows the county trustee to take care of our property and then tell us how we dispose of our own property. Am I going in the right direction? Help me understand that.
That's not necessarily in the purview of the Blight Authority, so I don't know how that would work as far as city and county owned property.
Can our staff please answer that? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Shandell Ryan, Chief Operating Officer. So what currently happens, as I understand it, is if there are both county and city taxes that are delinquent, then the trustee has more authority to address the matter. If it is only city taxes that are delinquent, then we do, through our real estate office, we do have a land bank where we will go after certain properties that are delinquent. I think the watermark, well, not the watermark, but the time frame is somewhere around 18 months. It does depend on, there is communication with the trustee's office that happens. I'm not sure exactly how that part works, but we do have properties when folks try to just pay the county taxes and not city. We do have a mechanism, and we have gone after those people, and they immediately will pay the taxes on the city side once they realize that they can't get away with not paying city taxes, that rumor is no longer in effect. But for the short answer is we do land bank some properties in the city if it is city taxes only. When it's city and county, that is handled by the trustee.
Okay, So they take precedence.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's what
Well,
I need to know.
I'm gonna add a caveat to that though, but that's the problem. So this is where it gets nuanced is what the practice has been for years is that people will pay one tax or the other, and it's usually they'll pay the county tax to avoid the county reacting, not the city tax, which is what brought this entire idea into fruition. But it can be cleaned up. The problem is if you really wanted to clean it all up, it requires constitutional changes, which is an absolute nightmare of a weight to lift. I'm of the opinion that the constitutional authority of county trustees needs to be changed. So they don't like that, especially in rural counties. So, but it's people game the system every which way. The best thing that's helped us in the last probably decade, or maybe it was put in longer, was the State Neighborhood Preservation Act, where to the gentleman's point, especially in Tennessee, has old school, I mean, very, very serious about property rights and infringing upon those rights. But after serving all this notice, including serving the property address itself, which was the big difference, which is I can't find Billy Joe and his 15 heirs. You can serve the property itself, and that will satisfy the court that you have done all of these steps before they're willing to move. That's very painful, very long, and again, takes resources and time. I mean, that's the kicker where I look at their budget. I'm like, thank God for the 3 Ls at the clinic at the University of Memphis. I mean, they do a lot of heavy lifting in this area. Chairman Jones.
Thank you. What was I going to add? Oh, something talking about the. Well, no. It was something regarding Ms. Robinson's statement along those lines, but and it's more so a comment. You would think, though, that you can have a property because the county tax rate is higher than the city's tax rate. It's almost always the case that the county tax bill is going to be high, or what they owe from a county standpoint is going to be greater than what they owe from the city standpoint. And so with that being the case, and it's always, because of state law, they're always going to have that, I guess, right of first acquisition.
I can't speak to the legal rights of the trustee's office, but you are right. The county taxes typically, just in general, is one thing I wanted to mention. In general, when the tax sale happens, the trustee has the authority to decide how much to accept. So we may not, to your point, I think what you're making is that we may not get all of the taxes that are owed on the property. And likewise, the county may not get all the taxes owed on the property. The trustee sort of has discretion to take certain offers and, make that judgment call. And I think that's the ultimate discussion you were trying to have right there.
Correct, yeah. And then looking at y'all's budget, if we look at a $50,000, well, $100,000 total account for property acquisition, how many properties are we talking about with that allocation?
Well, that varies. It varies on the acquisition type of the parcel.
Okay, so I guess if you can give me what the experience has been for 23, granted, all things being equal, you have higher acquisition costs. How much were you able to do? Did you have 100,000 last year?
We just got a $100,000 grant in last month from Convergence Memphis, where we were able to take that $100,000 and put 26,000 with it, and with that, roughly 130,000 after all the fees and associated fees as well. We were able to acquire 11 parcels of land in the Whitehaven Hills East community at homes in Tullahoma, where they've been complaining of warehousing, logistics, and distribution, and not residential. And the land was actually in heir property, and all of the heirs lived in Denver. And we were able to take this land in partnership with Convergence. And what's unique about it is that the land has a commercial covenant from the 1980s on it. where they were going to build commercial in these people's neighborhoods. And so we were able to work with the neighborhood. We were able to get in here, buy this land, and we're going to dispose of it to United Housing. And they're going to build 11 new homes that will be affordable and sold at $150, which is comparable with the homes in the area. So to answer the larger question, I feel that given what we've done with $100,000 and with better relationships with the county, and as we continue to work through municipal transfer with the city, with real estate, I think that we could at least, I feel comfortable looking that we could get 2025.
With if you receive the total allocation that you requested for the city?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and of course, with that, we would leverage that to do more.
All right. We're going to meet with you guys, not on the microphone. A lot we want to talk about. Thanks for all the work you're doing. I know this is the mechanism that was set up under this administration. I know Chief McGowan and others had, what? McGowan. That's what I said. Did I mumble through it? Chief McGowan? President McGowan, whatever his title is. Ogre, his call sign from the Navy. And you guys have ramped and ramped, but it's time that either we as a city government and you as a quasi-governmental agency really put teeth to this thing and get it going the direction that it was envisioned to happening or move on. And I don't think that the latter is going to be the case, but this is like one of those things that drives people that are outside of this building, and even inside this building, crazy, because it's just like, well, that's just government. Like the whole point is to be able to find an entity that can streamline, aggregate, and put back out into production these lots and properties and assemblages is the term we use, Jeff, assemblage, so that it can be developed and create value for neighborhoods. And so we've got to find a way to really partner with you guys. And I know a lot of times that just means money. But hopefully, as we're getting towards, as you're getting to that ramp, you're self-sustaining through that reproduction and you're able to start creating value and selling properties and partnering or shared equity models, however that's going to work. But you have a big supporter here. We just got to get you guys, going. So thanks for coming. Appreciate your time. We'll see you guys shortly.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
All right, our friends from GIF, come on down. Please let the record show that Councilman Ford is present and Councilman Canale is here with us. Name and title, and the floor is yours.
I'm Megan Galtney, the Executive Director at GIF, located at 254 South Lauderdale, Memphis, Tennessee, 38126. Do I need to pull the PowerPoint up, or? Oh, I sent it in. I didn't know if I needed to pull it up or if they were going to do it for me. Okay. I'm not seeing how to make this. Yeah, it doesn't look like mine. Yes, this is the one I need. I just need to do it full page. Sorry. There it is. Thank you. I'm used to the icon at the bottom. Yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. So sorry about that. I'm used to hitting an icon at the bottom. So GIF is a nonprofit organization that has been around for 53 years in the city of Memphis. And we are a nonprofit organization that was actually founded in 1971. Our 990 form, financials are audited annually by Fouts and Morgan. So our 990 form is prepared and filed online. We're actually in the process of our audit right now. We have previously received $250,000, and we received the first payment of $125 in December of 22, and we received that second payment of $125 in February of 23. Our mission statement is to break the destructive cycle of crime through Christ-centered intervention services. Our problem statement, or the thing that we answer at JIF, is the immediate solution being addressed would be public safety as it relates to juvenile crime by offering varying levels of intervention services by reducing recidivism rates among young people. And for some reason, our goals didn't make it on there, so I will just tell you this. Our goals at JIF are to work with young people who come to us through mentorship, through educational support, through professional development with workforce training, through personal development, and we do all of this in a holistic manner. We always make sure that we address the child as a whole by offering mental and behavioral health services if they're needed and any other deficiencies that they might have in their lives. With this money that we're requesting from the City Council, we will have the ability to serve 125 young men ranging from ages 12 to 18. And the list of services that would be provided with the city's funding would be 16 weeks of intervention services, intensive intervention services. Transportation is provided to each young man to and from our facility, whether that is from their school or from their home. We also provide a hot, well-balanced meal to every child when they come to the facility for programming, spiritual enrichment, and positive outreach activities. Again, we're requesting $250,000 for these intervention services for these young men. It would cover 23% of our overall operating budget, and you can see a detailed budget on that next page. We have an operating budget of a little over $1.1 million, and again, we're requesting $250,000. To give you a little more information on each one of those line items, the operating category actually includes our accounting services, insurance, subscriptions, and maintenance. And our programming category would also include direct programming costs like transportation and meals that are provided for the kids, data management and IT, and then utilities. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one quick comment, then a quick question.
Okay.
I've been familiar with Jeff for a very, very long time. You guys do incredible work. Like the stories out of there and the rates of recidivism, like they're so low. Have you reached capacity today, or is there room for more?
We have not reached capacity, so that's one thing that I look back at my COO, CFO in the back, we have delved into that. For some reason, Jeff has never reached capacity, and I'm not sure why that is. So we served 335 young people in 2022. With our current staff that we have right now, we have the ability to serve 438 young people. We don't control the referrals that come to JIF. We are open to obviously serve more young people. We have not reached capacity, so we take the referrals that come to us from juvenile court. So we don't have control over those referrals that come in.
So that's one place. So one place you get your referrals is juvenile court.
Yes.
So I don't have a good relationship like others do with Judge Sugarman, but I would hope that those that do could put a bug in his ear. And then two, I'm kind of disappointed on the fundraising line, because I know in years past you guys have had, and I know some of your donors have been very supportive. One of the things that we as a council try not to do, and I'm sure the mayor's cognizant of, is try not to be a huge portion of your funding. Typically for the council, we try not to go over 30% of your annual funding. Mm-hmm. But I guess one of the things that we can do is try and help at least in other ways, which is, utilize things like Memphis Brand Initiative, the city's website, to try and get the word out on some of these programs. But we've got to find a way, kind of like we did with Boys and Girls Club, which is obviously a larger, much more national organization, to try and get you guys, like kind of like with BAM, just accelerated more, even though you've been operating for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Because like I said, I'm sure you've got the data, but JIF is very successful. I mean, that's what's so crazy, that you haven't reached capacity. The idea that, I think Jeff tells me this, I think this is part of GVIP, like we've got 500 people, adults rather, that cause a significant amount of the harm and damage in our community. So not as saying it's the same 500, but the idea that you could reach 300 more at-risk youth that early on, and we're not doing that is really disheartening. So
It is to us as well.
so we'll chat. I mean, I know that I'd like to do more, but I want to make sure that, you know, we're comfortable kind of going past what we would typically do, even though you're in the executive budget for operating dollars, that we kind of stay within our parameters so that we're not giving but favoritism. But anyway.
And I wanted to touch on this, one thing that I didn't say. When we started seeing that we weren't reaching capacity with the numbers coming from juvenile court, we took a different approach this past year at JIF. So one of the things that we wanted to start doing is not just offering that early intervention and intensive intervention piece, we wanted to offer preventative as well. So we've started strengthening that community referral piece. So we have been out in the community sharing our story. We get referrals from churches, schools, pediatricians not too long ago. And then we've also created a partnership with the Youth and Family Resource Center in Fraser. So we also intervene with those young people. The goal is to try and intervene before they touch the courts.
Amen. I've got Councilwoman Logan and then Johnson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that. I am so glad that they came on down to give us this presentation because, as she said, they are not at capacity and they have a wonderful facility. I mean, it is set up so well for what we need, what we've been looking for in terms of intervention, prevention for youth. And their model is a wonderful model. And, you know, that's all we've been talking about lately is what we're going to do, you know, to assist the young people in our community. And their approach is one that is successful and it's holistic and it's a center of excellence. And, you know, I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to mention about the community referrals. Not only are they getting, you know, referrals from juvenile court, but the schools can, anyone can, you know, refer a young person, and some of the ways that they think out of the box to reach the young people is phenomenal. So, and they also have an evening program. It's not overnight, but it's evening, not yet. But they do have a huge gym, and you know the potential is there for a lot more than what they're doing. But I do think this is a great opportunity for us to make a big difference, you know, in what we've been talking about. So, thank you for that, and colleagues. I hope that we can find some more funding for them to reach capacity and even expand beyond what they're doing now. I yield back.
And you may have answered this, I'm sorry. Your sources of funding are what, typically outside of the $250 from the city?
We also receive funding from the county, less than what we receive from the city, but we have a diverse group of donors. We receive funding from foundations, from corporations, from churches, from individuals. I mean, we have a diverse group of donors,
so
but we're offering a service to the city and the county. So
that's why your fundraising line. I was like, I personally know people that. Do you want to?
Yes, that's just the expense side.
Gotcha. All right, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yes.
I may come get a breakdown, a high level breakdown, because that'll be something we'll take into consideration. But I'll say, I know 2 families in particular. I was like, that makes sense to me. Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. That was one question, too, I had in regards to your other sources of income. But based on your budget here, how many individuals are you projecting that you'll be able to assist with this $1 million?
With the $1 million, we successfully served 335 young people last year, but we could serve more than that. So we would have had the ability with this operating budget to serve 438 kids.
Okay, so you're saying you can serve 438 kids with this same budget?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, so it seems to me the problem is trying to get individuals to the site. I don't know if the funding is the major source yet, but we got to find some way to make certain that different organizations are aware that it's available. Now, what type of tracking do you have on the individuals that participate?
We track recidivism. We have a database that we launched in 2022, so we track an endless number of metrics, but the ones that we're focused on the most are recidivism and the charges, the common charges that we're seeing. That's how we make programmatic changes in the curriculum, by looking at the charges that we saw patterns and behaviors and charges.
So you only been tracking for 1 year?
No, ma'am. They've actually always tracked recidivism at JIF. I've only been there for a year and a half, so we have a database that actually tracks it now as opposed to doing it manually on an Excel
What type of
spreadsheet.
results, I mean, what type of metrics, or can you provide that information to us to tell us how well 16 weeks makes a difference?
Absolutely.
We
Yes, I
really
can.
need to know that,
Okay.
I think, in regards to how effective it is.
And if you haven't gone over there, go see their facility. Like, go take a tour and walk around. It's amazing.
Historically, the JIF case mentoring program, which is the one that we have listed as the project in this budget, has a 65% success rate.
Okay.
And in 2022, we had a 72% success rate from the information that I tracked.
What is your measure for success?
The measure, we measure success in two different ways.
Okay.
So we receive reports from juvenile court on a monthly basis for all young people who have been referred to JIF that either recidivate while they are in programming or if they recidivate for a year after programming.
So it's a year span that you're
Yes.
trying to hold to.
Yes.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Great questions, Councilwoman. I've got Chairman Jones, and then Councilwoman Swearingen Washington, and then Dr. Warren.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Can you talk about your outreach efforts and what you're doing to try to get to that 438 in addition to one of the things that my colleague sitting to the right of me mentioned, the truancy department with Shelby County Schools. Is that part of your outreach?
It is. Prior to arriving at JIF, I was at the DA's office over truancy. So that is a department that I'm very familiar with. So yes, we do have outreach efforts with the school system, and not just Memphis and Shelby County schools, but we're reaching out to other municipalities as well. But we really want to we've created some collateral pieces in this past year, and we've done everything that we can to push those out into the community to share the story and the services that we offer at JIF, because we really want to strengthen that preventative piece. I would love for us to have the ability to intervene with young people before they come in contact with the courts.
You know, colleagues, as you know, I try to always break things down to the most common denominator, that being the dollar. And so if we look at it from the standpoint of the 125 that's part of this presentation and our $250,000 allocation, that's $2,000 per child, or $166 per child. Now, if we look at it and break it down based upon the total amount that they've served, that's $62 a month. If we look at what they have the capacity to serve, that's less than $50 a month. So, you know, I just think that this is money well spent when we've made this allocation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
May I comment? Sorry to step up, but
You are the chief operating officer of the city, so I feel like
I
it's
appreciate
fair.
it. I was trying to get your attention. Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. I wanted to just mention, I know that we've had some meetings with JIF as well with the GVIP department. So we are looking at ways that we can plug in kids from that program to get some preventative types of intervention as well. So I just wanted to put that out there for everyone to recognize that is definitely a partnership that we are working on solidifying soon.
Right. So I love that, because one of the things for me is somebody may be interested in landscaping, or maybe, you know, figure out that business approach. GIF can take somebody into a totally different direction, right? Into culinary, into these different areas. And so that's what I hope we start to identify, things that actually can find interest in therapeutic. And so I appreciate that. Dr. Warren and then Councilwoman Logan.
We were talking that one of the issues we're having downtown is we have a lot of kids out past curfew, and we don't have any place to take them. And I was hearing that you guys were having lack of capacity with what you could actually do. Have we, Chief, have we thought about using JIF as a way to have a place for our police officers to take truant or people out past curfew, and a way to plug them into the system in such a way that they can then get programmatic help?
As a part of the truancy effort, no.
Not truancy, this is curfew.
As
Out after.
He's talking
You're
about
right.
it
As a
down
part
here.
of curfew, that's right. I used the wrong word.
Yeah.
As a part of the curfew effort, we have not. I'm happy to have some more conversations about that. But we have, in general, in terms of the youth that have been identified through GVIP as those needing some services and
I am
intervention.
down.
Definitely.
GVIP sounds great. That's
Right.
a great way to go. Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
Okay, I'm just thinking that we also have this other issue that in order to keep our policemen on the street, if we want to be able to identify people that need this programming, I bet they're out, at 11, 12 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday night on Beale Street without their parents knowing they're there, and they probably would do better with a different type of program.
No, that's a great idea.
So-
We'll be happy to talk more about that.
So I'm throwing that up for you guys to consider. Thank you.
Councilwoman Logan actually visited JIF about 5 or 6 weeks ago with that proposition or idea. And it's
Great
something
minds.
it's something that we've discussed as a team. JIF has never been a 24-hour facility, so we would obviously have to look at what that would look like and change the way we are currently operating. We do have an evening reporting center right now where the majority of our referrals for that program comes through the juvenile courts, but we end that program at 8 p.m. at night, so we'd have to look at personnel. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely needed. So if
Chris
you-
is the one who keeps me from saying, yes, I want to serve all the kids
Yeah,
in the city.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris Couch, Jeff. It's a whole different program. We have succinct curriculum that our students follow, 16-week, 9-week, and 20-day. The overnight is a different look, but we certainly, on the visit, we're looking at it and looking at the detail of that to see. Our facilities would have to have some major changes to help be able to accommodate those children at night.
It may have to be, I don't have any idea, but please think out of the box on this about a way that we could mold this into even 5 kids a night, 10 kids a night, some sort of situation where we can then get them into your daytime program and maybe save them from hurting themselves or someone else down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Warren.
Chair.
Councilwoman Logan.
Thank you, Chair. Even prior, when we talked, they were not there yet and would take some time, to review it before. But even in thinking about it, the programming that they have, if they're not able to be the center that's open overnight, maybe their program could be used at the overnight center that we have. The community center that they're looking at, Chief Davis mentioned that they were preparing.
So the community center is going to be, the plan is for it to be used to do activities with the youth. So we would have the PALS organization would be there with the youth, doing activities with them. And I think ultimately the question would be, would they have staff members that could work after 8 p.m.? And I think that's ultimately what they're saying.
But if we shored up that program and they had training and taught them that piece, it's one thing to have them and do activities, but to include any other support that may be needed if they're there overnight in terms of wraparound service counseling or anything like that, that's just something that we could look at because they have a proven program. Maybe if you can't do it overnight, that some of that staff could be trained by them, or just something to look at and investigate. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, not just activities, but be a support and a help in those other wraparound services potentially.
We're happy to look at all wraparound services, including JIP. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Very good discussion. Thank you for the work that you do. We look forward to seeing how we can continue to support you. And you're lucky it's a budget hearing, because if this had been a regular committee meeting, we would have just spent the next 3 hours talking about truancy. All right.
That isn't my job anymore.
Yeah, but we'd love to get a background. Sometimes we feel like we don't get straight answers up here. Thank you so much for your time and all the work you do.
Thank you, and we'd love for you to come down and see Jeff. Anyone who hasn't taken a tour recently, you need to.
Thank you so much. All right, colleagues, going on through the Aging Commission, or Area Agency on Aging and Disability, Aging Commission of the Mid-South. Hi, if you could give us your name and title for the record, and the floor is yours.
Kim Darty, Executive Director of the Aging Commission of the Mid-South. Okay, thank you. Kim Darty, Executive Director of the Aging Commission of the Mid-South. Our organization is, many of you all know, it's part of Shelby County government. We come before you each year to for a modest request of $144,000 to match federal funding to provide services to people who are older and disabled in the city of Memphis. Our mission is to provide information and assistance to connect seniors, adults with disabilities, their families, caregivers with the tools needed to maximize their independence and their chosen community. In 21-22, we served over 9,612 Memphians with one or more services, receiving 444,877 units of service. As I mentioned, seeking match funding for information and assistance, coordination of services, and administration. This will be less than 1% of our budget, and here is our budget. I'm sorry, I see my budget, but you guys don't. I'll try again.
Come on, Andy.
It's a delay, okay. Up, here we go. Thank you. And on my board of directors is Commissioner Robinson.
All right. Yeah.
Wow, you guys, a wish list. That would be incredible. My wish list would just be more funding. We continue to have to pass on to our groups that we support here in the community to help us raise match money for federal funding. And if we could secure more funding from this body, then we would not have to ask groups like MIFA, Neighborhood Christian Center, other groups that come before you all seeking funds. We wouldn't have to ask them to produce match. So, for example, if you give me $10, I can use that to get, to $100. If you give MIFA $10, you've just given them $10. But I get matched. So
If
we
you
have
could send us that would be great to see your matching schedules.
So for example, this year, Commissioner Robinson, as you know, we'll send about $4 million over to MIFA, right? But we have to produce, the community has to find 10% match money for all of those services. So, this is not even enough funding for us to match, the MIFA. So, it just really, when you help me, you help other people, right? Help those other groups we contract with in the community. We do considerable work with the Alzheimer's and Dementia Day services, which I know is a super needed service in this community. Again, we have to go to them and ask them to match some of the federal funding we give to them. So that's why I always mention we're using this as match money in my presentation.
How much of your funding, you mentioned that, and I guess it's just how it's set up around the state perhaps, but how much funding do you get from the county government?
None. But I would say we get no cash from the county government.
Why are you set up, if you don't mind explaining really quickly your structure, why is that? Is it through the state agency because it's usually state to county?
In this particular instance, the state of Tennessee contracts with Shelby County government. The area agency on aging and disability is housed in county government. But I would say this, we don't get, say, a direct line from county government, but remember, county government is providing vast administrative services, right? Retirement funding, accounting, all those functions, infrastructures.
A lot of your SG&A.
Yeah, tons of that.
Thank you.
I mean, in fairness, I think those are real costs, right?
Fair, yeah, no doubt about it. Councilwoman Logan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to know, I had some constituents over the last year, several call, and it's been increasing. And so I reached out to staff and, realized that the Aging Commission was our go-to, to get information, resources and I have a lot of seniors. And so I really was shocked to find out, when you're in faith-based community, churches just kind of help. But when you look in the community to see what's there is a vast need for more services, because at one point you all were like months behind, there was a waiting list or wait list of 4 months behind in terms of assisting people. And so does this budget reflect an increase or speak to me or help me understand how this speaks to increased support for your agency to help more people or to get caught up or to not be, months behind? I know you have a lot of different programming, but when people call, say for in-home, I know there's an uptick in in-home care or assistance as well as adult daycare. There's food everywhere in the city, to get for seniors, but personal care, home care, in-home care, and support like that, how are you all increasing your capacity in this budget?
So, honestly, we're not increasing our capacity in this budget. We're continuing to ask you all for the same amount of money that we've asked for you for years. The funding we get through the state government, which, as you can see, is primarily federal funding, then some state award match, and then, the rest of our budget is pretty small. This does not increase our budget in any way. And I'll be honest with you, Councilman, I think you all know this, but the older and disabled community in our country is expanding rapidly. We are nowhere on pace to take care of that community in this city, in this county, in this state, in this country. Like,
come on. Let us.
This does not reflect in any way the need. This reflects what we are given.
Okay.
So waiting for 4 months is not very long to wait, to be honest with you. We have people who've been waiting for years for personal assistance services in their home. We have been able to decrease the time waiting on food in our community, which I will tell you is the most asked for service in the community is food. By far outweighs any other service asked for is the food. I would also say that one of the real difficulties that we continue to have in this community and across the country are the labor force that will respond to home-based services, homemaker or personal assistance. It's very difficult to meet that labor force, and so the groups that we work with who provide that service cannot find enough workers to meet the need, even when there is more funding available. But I would just, I have to be honest with you all. We could spend twice the amount of money pretty easily. We could spend 3 times the amount of money pretty easily. We have lots of older people in this community who live in poverty, and their ability to provide for themselves for basic services is incredible. Something that we don't do, that there are other there are city and county agencies that do, is housing. But if you'd really like to talk about how to help seniors and people who are disabled, this community is in dire need of affordable, suitable housing for people to live in. Rents, mortgages, utilities are incredible. We have very little capacity to support seniors who are aging. And you all hear about some of those federally funded high rises in this town. You guys get calls about them, right? I get calls about them. That is the only alternative for seniors and disabled people in this community with any sort of affordability. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've never come over here and people really ask me any questions about what's needed. People want to talk to me about the slides. I would love to talk to you all about the kind of services that are needed for people who are disabled and elderly in this community.
But it goes back to the funding. So is your federal award, is that formulaic through the state?
It is formulated through the state.
Can you send us after, like, how that formula works? And
it's based on I mean, it's pretty simple. It's based on census population over 60. And so our organization supports people in Fayette, Shelby, Tipton, and Lauderdale counties. We support 4 counties. And so that formulation is based on the census population of those 4 counties. Now, truth be told, there are more elderly people in Shelby County than there are people in Fayette, Tipton, and Lauderdale County. So that is not, that doesn't detract, so to speak. 90% of the people who receive any service from us live within the city of Memphis. So, so there are 9 AAADs across the state. Our organization only supports 4, right? So there are other AAADs that support 10, 12, 14, 15, 16 counties, right? There are only 2 AAADs that receive more funding than us. This is the one that supports the greater Nashville region and the one that supports the Knoxville area, but they also have 15 or 16 counties they're supporting. But it's all census driven.
Again, this is why I would like to, another time, a deeper dive, just to understand if it's, so you take community development block grant. It's a formula problem for us, but it's also a pie problem, right? It's basically capped at $10 billion, and the federal government doesn't have the will to change the pie and the formula.
That's correct. The federal government sends a certain amount of money to the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee divvies it up based on census numbers. It's the Older Americans Act. So it's not like there's more money coming to the state of Tennessee. Unless the federal government sends more money to the state of Tennessee, there is not more money.
Chair, I would like for her to come back in committee and talk about this because it is a huge problem in our community and it's only increasing because as we age. And we're going to have to figure out something because our constituents are all affected, grandparents, neighbors, aunties. So I would like to for you to come back.
I would love to do that and really talk to you about some of the things we know. Clearly, the amount of money being locally put into the organization, is not a huge amount of money. And so if there are people who would really be interested in putting more local money into the organization and talk about that, it would be wonderful. But I will tell you this, currently the money that is contributed, being able to multiply that the way we do is the best way we know to use that money, to use that as the match money for the federal grant. So we are really, multiplying that money over and over again. It is the best we can do. But if there are people who would like to get involved in purchasing more services as well, we would love to do that.
So you say that, one last question, Chairman. You're saying that there's a need for food, but then there's a great need for in-home services as well. And there are a number of agencies that are involved in food security, and producing food for our citizens, but not as many are in business to help seniors in home. So if you had more funding, would you be able to help in that regard with adult daycare, homemaker, in-home services, or there are no people in that field to work?
It's very difficult to find people in those fields to work.
Okay.
Yeah. I do want to just, continue to talk about the need, though, for food. The food, what we do is different than what most people do. We deliver meals to people's homes, and a lot of people, we also deliver food boxes to people's homes. And so, it can be very difficult for people who are elderly or disabled to get in their car and sit a long time in their car and wait and do these drive-through food pass-out things that you guys see at churches and that sort of thing. So this is different because that can sometimes present a number of as problems as you might imagine for people. For people who are elderly and disabled. But thank you so much for asking those great questions and really being interested.
Councilman Ford and then Dr. Warren.
Okay, Agent Commission does a lot of different things. Yeah, that's why you need to come back here and tell us what all you do. Especially with the elders and everybody else that their children and family don't do anything for them. Okay, Agent Commission falls in line and does all these different things. So a lot of people don't know what happened. The only time the family come back when they die. I'm being very serious because, hey, I handle a lot of them. And I kind of help the Agent Commission to try to bury these people because they do come back then, okay? Y'all have done all the work and then they come back to see what they can get from the Agent Commission. Am I telling the truth?
We do find ourselves in some incredible positions with families who are
because the things that you all do, okay? And hey, they're very great with taking care of people, okay? Yeah, they've always, that's why I kind of, make sure, hey, they have to call me out. I'd have to do what I have to do because I know what y'all are up against. Now, let me ask you this one question. You said local government, you want 144 from us. Where did that 14 other thousand come from?
Shelby, Tipton, and Lauderdale counties send us some funding.
Yeah, but nothing else comes from Shelby County government.
We don't
Across the street.
Sorry.
Across the street don't give y'all anything other than what they kind of provide otherwise.
A great amount of services to support the organization, yes.
Okay, good enough. I just wanted everybody to know. Yeah, but I just wanted everybody to know what they do. They help all these elderly people that need that help, and especially when families are not there to help them.
Yes.
Okay, and y'all step in.
You mentioned that, and I appreciate you mentioning that. A service that we provide that a lot of people don't know is that we are the actual court-appointed guardian for a number of people. By statute, we act as guardian for people.
Exactly. When the person died, they want these people that don't take care of them, that they put them out, will try to take y'all to court. For taking care of these people, and that's a shame. But that's what they do, don't they?
Yeah, we have. We sometimes meet people who have no one in their life who will help them with anything, and their needs end up in court, and we are actually their guardian, and we then begin to make all medical and financial decisions on their behalf. And we are the organization by state government, by state statute, that does that. And that's something a lot of people don't know. It's an incredible responsibility.
Appreciate it. That's all I just wanted to know that.
Yes, sir. Dr. Warren.
Thank you, Ms. Dougherty. I think the body would be interested in perhaps a proposal where you looked at how you could maximize your federal funds with extra funds from us. So, I mean, if you're looking at, I want to get more Meals on Wheels from MIFA this year, and if you gave us an extra $60,000, that would equal $5 million more in food I get for federal grants. And specifically, just look at programs that you think you could go ahead and expand, because some of these I know are limited by the number of people you can hire.
Right.
But that sort of proposal, I think, would be well received.
Yeah, I mean, just off the top, and this is just an example at MIFA, we'll send them about, $4 million. They will have to fundraise 10% more to bring in that. And so what we could do to take the stress off of that organization and other organizations here in town who are providing personal assistance, homemaker, adult day. I mean, we can certainly bring a number back to you to say what you could do to relieve the stress on those nonprofits, and their fundraising would be pretty easy to do.
Well, I think what we would like to do is, I'm not as worried about their stress of fundraising because I want them to keep doing it. I think if we can be additive.
Yes.
So if there's, it's not like we don't want them to have to fundraise. We want them to get, because that's how people know what they're doing. But if there's something we could do that might make them more effective and get you more money that we could spend on those specific things that would actually function.
Sure.
But I hear what you're saying. I mean, I know you feel sad they have to fundraise, but
well, not sad. It's an absolute necessity.
Right.
We can't take these funds from the federal, these funds won't come to us without that.
So we're saying, how do we give a +1?
Yeah.
How do we make this and give it some proposals? That would be really interesting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and just to your point, when we talk about, for example, MIFA, another service that we offer through them is we pay them to be ombudsman for people living in nursing homes and long-term care facilities in this community. Do you think about how valuable it is to seniors in nursing homes to have a number they can call and have an outside entity to help them work through their problems? Think about what that would mean to a senior who has no one to advocate for them. And so those services, just those basic services, are so important.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you so much, Shandell Ryan, Chief Operating Officer. I just wanted to note for everyone that this budget proposal does include, as it does each year, a grant for MIFA in the amount of $669,000. Just wanted everyone to realize that.
So if we gave it to these guys, would they be able to make that $20 million instead of giving it to MIFA for $660?
Well, we don't have $20 million. We only have $14 million there. We wouldn't, but
so I'm saying is,
but less a greater amount to us would mean that they could use some of that money, maybe even for some other things as well. So, I mean, there's just that balance going on.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing I'd like to see us balance most effectively, and I don't know how to tell you to do that.
Jeff, what's the match?
Chair, may I ask, what is the $600,000? It's for a number of things from MIFA, correct?
It is.
Yeah.
It's not dealing with seniors. We have housing and projects and other things.
Correct. It's for general.
Okay, because they may get just a bare minimum of that, actually, right?
Oh, I'm not saying that they get that full allocation to MIFA.
No.
I just know that there were questions about MIFA and what MIFA is getting, and I wanted to just, for the record, let everyone know what is in the budget for MIFA.
Yeah, utility assistance.
That's an excellent point. I mean, there's utility assistance, there's homeless services for women and children at MIFA. They do a lot of incredible things besides the work they do for us. I only use them as an example to talk to you all because they're a group that we all are familiar with.
Councilwoman Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the presentation today, but you all just don't know the heart of this work, as I've heard it over and over again. we have more and more aging people, and we've got to be able to do more to serve them. The number one thing that gripped me, and with people calling me and asking help for seniors, everything now is set up where you have to use a computer to get it. Our seniors don't have computers, don't know how to use computers, and it's more expensive to have somebody to answer the phone, but that's where we are.
And that's what we do. We don't ask seniors to use a computer to get a service from us. You know that.
I know that, but that's what I want them to understand that. But we could shore that up some more because they have to wait for a long time to get answers to those calls.
Yeah, I would say something that would be super valuable is to have a couple of more people answering the phone. Councilman Robinson is, she has a lot of information because she sees those monthly reports that I put out. She knows that we are answering 2,500, 3,000 calls a month and trying to get back to those people within 2 days. It's or maybe put them on a list and they wait a little while, but just the act of talking to someone and hearing a compassionate, caring voice, if you're older, sometimes can be very helpful.
Okay. So one of my colleagues wants to know if you share with us again, if we increase the 144 to 244, how much leverage do you have with your other grants? What would that make for us?
Yeah, so
if we doubled it.
It's 10% match. All right, so for every
match.
$1 you give me, I can get 9.
Okay, you understand that?
That sounds lovely.
Okay.
Yeah, and it just really helps the entire community.
Mm-hmm. And it breaks my heart when people call and say that they have needs for personal care, and especially utilities, when we do give money for utilities. However, our young people have gotten very creative, and they know how to get in the system, they get in the line first, and our seniors are still looking for help, where our young people who decided they don't want to work and do whatever they're doing, I'm not saying all of them, I'm just saying I know who some of them are, who they are, and they are working the system where our seniors are being left out. Let's try to find some additional dollars to help our seniors in 2 areas. One is being able to reach out to someone and get the help that they need, and that's with a staff.
Information and assistance
Yes,
staffing.
and 2, around public assistance as it relates to utility bills.
If you that would not be directed toward us. We really don't manage a program like that. You might think of another group in the community that could help with that.
We know MIFA does that,
but they do that with another group.
That, but they don't get enough money for that, or we don't categorize it where so much goes to this age group and so much goes to this. We're probably going to have to think about how we distribute those dollars. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. All right, I was going to pass on this, and then Chairman Jones, I'm so sorry but we brought the match up. Are you saying that you are required to find a 10% match because you have
federal law?
By federal law. So my question to you is where is that match coming from?
Now it's coming from the providers who provide the service.
That's okay. That's
what I was talking about to you all, that we relieve pressure from other areas so people can use the money. They are fundraising for other things.
Perfect. That's what I needed to know. I didn't understand.
It's federal law.
Yeah. Well, I knew the match was. What I didn't understand is you're matching state. You have a state award that's helping you match the federal dollars, and then the question is where is the other match coming from? If I give you $100,000, where are you going to go match it from? It's from the provider.
That's right.
Got it. All right, Chairman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this conversation has really depressed me, y'all. It has. One thing I want to stress to you, and think about this, and Ms. Daugherty, correct me if I'm wrong. Looking at this page right here, I don't care what it is that we provide you additionally, it affects these units here. Whether it's adult daycare, whether it's congregate meals, whether it's home delivered meals, anything that we do, colleagues, drives those numbers. And so, respectfully, we don't need to meet again. We don't need to have another committee. Anything that we provide, colleagues, is helping this community. And so I go back to a conversation or something that I've said. Our budget tells us what's important to us. We can say we can say all day long what is important to us. But until we commit more dollars for this, and I've tried to talk about what we need to do for children, and you know what? I admit, I haven't been as vocal for our senior population, and I apologize for that. But colleagues, this is our opportunity to step up and say to the next or equally vulnerable population that we serve, that they are important to us. And so for us to be okay with whatever allocation that they've had for the past 2, 3, 5, whatever period of time that is, that's shame on us. It is saying to this community, our actions are saying to this community, this is not something that's important to us. We just can't do that. So I just look at it from the standpoint, whatever we do, colleagues, is going to drive all of these numbers here. You know, if it's 10,000 more that we improve, that we add to this, that's increasing this personal emergency response, all of this. So I just want us to think about this as whatever we come up with, it's shame on us if we say, okay, well, we're satisfied with 144 because that's what we've been doing for the past X amount of years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. So you mentioned one more thing and again, Chairman Jones is right, and Councilwoman Robinson's been a tireless advocate since I've been on the council, and I'm sure well before.
And Chairman Jones has heard me in other times speak.
Let's not give him too much credit.
Yeah, he's heard me talk for about the past 4 years about this particular matter.
But my question for you goes back to the formula, because these are the things where, you know, look, we're just just the local governing body, but you know, we do have is he in his sixth term now? Sixth-term congressman, right? And you've got another one on Ways and Means. And so my question for you is, in the formula for this program, is it census over 60, or does it take into account a weighted average based on poverty level?
It has poverty and populations affected disparagingly.
That's what I'm so shocked by. Like, if you told me, okay, maybe we don't have the highest number of aging in place, I can almost be willing to bet we have the highest per capita weighted by poverty in the state for a major municipal area.
And to that point, that's why I mentioned to you, we only support 4 counties, and we receive the third largest amount of funding for the state.
But it's scratching the surface, seemingly, right? Like, and you're talking about the largest voting block historically. Like, I'm fascinated by the federal government at this point.
Yes.
This would be untenable in other states.
Well,
and federally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, you know, federal funds get distributed based on poverty levels over all of states. You guys know, like, kind of how Medicaid's distributed.
Sure. Not
like
as much as we should, but
all that kind of works together. I will tell you, our local congressman, you know, we talk to his staff weekly. We help them with seniors. I mean, they are very involved. If you guys get an opportunity, just read about the Older Americans Act of 1965, and then you will really understand where the load share of our funding comes from, how the federal government distributes that to states, and then, you know, really what happens here. I mean,
I'd be
It
curious.
is, yeah.
I know you're very busy. I would
No,
love to
no.
get a government affairs brief on that and some recommendations that, you never know if you can actually move the needle on something, but the more people that start to get in someone's ear, shockingly, you can kind of create some momentum on certain issues, especially as people are barreling down re-election years and certain things like that. And I'm talking about more at the federal level, but because I don't care whether you're Senator Haggerty, Senator Blackburn, or Congressman Cohen, or Congressman Green, or whomever, they all have super voter blocks that are in the older populations.
And so they reauthorize the Older Americans Act every so many years. And so there's always, real push from communities for greater amounts of dollars, but this is competing with everything else, right? And so when they start cutting, they start cutting. I'll be honest with you, we have more money now than we've ever had. And a big part of this budget right here is rescue plan money, right? We've still got this year and a couple more years of rescue plan money. I'm going to come back to you 3 years from now, and this budget's going to be a third less than it is today.
Wow.
Right? Because the rescue plan money goes away.
I know. I wish going back to
you
Judge's
guys,
point, I wish I had known more when we were going through ARPA allocation.
I think this is something you want to know, right?
Yeah. Well, the good news, I saw an email a couple Fridays ago that told me I'm just going to have this big bucket of money in 3 years. Chairman Jones, you have some final comments?
Yeah, one other thing, and keep this in mind, I know that my colleagues Robinson and Warren can relate to this. Shelby County was considered an affluent county compared to some of our other peers, but when you got down to Memphis, it was a totally different thing. When we talked about Shelby County schools, Memphis City schools in the ADA formula, the BEP formulation, we were considered as a county affluent.
Yes.
But once you get down to Memphis, those numbers are vastly different. So when you look at our poverty level as a city, if we are relying upon the state to fund us as a county, there's going to be some deception. Yeah.
Yes, and so here, kind of to your point, in the Shelby County, nearly 15% of all the population is over the age of 65, right? So this is what we know.
But if we were to look at that at a Memphis level, it would probably be higher.
It would probably be higher.
It would probably
That's
be
exactly
higher, yes.
right. Yes.
And then so if we look at what our county poverty rate is, it's going to be a certain number, but when we just look at it exclusively from a Memphis standpoint, that number is going to be higher.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, colleagues, what a wonderful discussion. Ms. Doherty, thank you for all the work that you do. I look forward to diving into some more of the government affairs stuff so we can understand.
Yes, I'd be delighted to hear from you all and maybe hear from you things you'd like to know, things you're interested in, and just come back and have a conversation with you and kind of let you know more about the Older Americans Act and how that impacts us locally.
Yeah, well, and I'll open the mic up to anybody that has a specific. My two things for me are the government affairs piece. And then, I've got my grandfather passed away last year and had in-home care for several years. His wife has late-stage dementia, and it's fine. It's hard, and you read it. We're not talking about LPNs we're just talking about basic. And I forget the term, caregivers.
Caregivers.
Yeah, they're now unionizing. My point that I'm driving at is it's incredible the shortage out there and a seemingly good opportunity. So I guess
that's what I was trying to say, couch in a nice way. Like, it's very difficult to find in-home workers. And I'll be honest with you, we have to pay the TN Care rates. Like, I am limited in paying the rates that TN Care pays, right? So I can pay $21 an hour for, say, an in-home aide. Private pay people regularly are paying $35 an hour. The VA is paying $35 an hour. So if there are a real shortage of people who do a kind of work, right, they're going to take private pay cases. They're going to take VA cases long before they take what we can pay.
But that's a significantly big point. Right back to Governor Harris. TN Care, that program can be altered by a change in the program and or the law at the Tennessee level, correct?
Yeah, the state of Tennessee determines the rate.
Right. And so that's an important thing for you to say. That, so learning that for me, now I can pick up the phone, text our delegation and say, this is something you need to look at.
Right. And so what typically happens is, although we're not TennCare, the state will not allow us to pay more than TennCare because they don't want us competing. Do you understand what I'm saying? They don't want us competing with the TennCare rate. So whatever rate TennCare sets, then the Commission on Aging will forward that rate to us that we can pay for state-funded services or the other federal services. But they're never going to allow us to go over that because they don't want us to compete and draw away from cases that TennCare could staff.
That's fair, because ultimately we end up like I was having this conversation with MATA.
It's the state competing with the state if
Right.
the rates aren't the same.
It's the same way MATA competes with the school system for bus drivers, and it's driving their rate.
Exactly.
But there's a way it can be so if we were debating, I would tell you then fine, there's a way it can be relational to where we don't have to drive like the market, but we can at least be competitive because a $14 spread isn't even in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, they usually match each other. But the TennCare rate's not adequate, right? I mean, if VA is paying 35, if families are paying 35, right, and then the state's paying 21.50, what do you think's going to happen?
Well, and even if you have the quality of care, so.
Those are all other,
I gotcha.
wow, big questions.
Yes, ma'am. Well said. Does anybody else?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other last things that you'd love to hear in future? If not, you can email.
When you come back, I do want my colleagues, they may already know, I just didn't know about how you can't have like home ownership and needing services as a senior. So when you come back, if you could talk about like SHIP and all those other programs, choices or whatever.
You can have home ownership and get services. You can't, it's a Medicaid eligibility question, and that's different. But I'd be glad to give you more information about that. And that is something people would be interested in. And the SHIP program is free Medicare counseling. Seniors are bombarded with Medicare calls like everybody's trying to sell them something. It's horrid. It is horrid. And we provide free counseling and help people work through that to choose what's best for them. We save seniors millions and millions of dollars every year with that free counseling to not fall prey to the sales. Not the senior. Yeah, you have no idea how
Getting
many.
that reverse mortgage from Tom Selleck.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys, you would be amazed at how many times we have someone call us and say, can you help my mom get out of this Advantage plan that she chose, right? Because, it's not, she can't go to her doctors anymore that she's gone to for years, all of these things. And it takes a year to get out of that. You can't just quit, right? It's a mess.
Well, I thank you for your time today, and we're going to bring you back when we've got some time in Councilwoman Swearingen Washington's committee, which I think is appropriate for this, for more of a brief. Thank you so much, and we look forward.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
to see you.
All right, colleagues, moving on to our last. Yeah, that's right. No, we ain't done with last for today. We've already had a presentation. This is more, I think, to talk about maintenance and facilities care. Was that right about that?
Yeah, you're right. Councilwoman Logan.
And then, I guess as we're getting set up so we don't have to do it afterwards, a couple quick housekeeping items. You and your staffs got several emails over the weekend and today that look like this with several documents. And there, if you haven't, please get your staff members to print them out for you. Or make sure you've got them. Everybody's got them. Okay, perfect. Take them home, look over them. It's a lot of the information that was requested: speed humps, traffic calming, notes, follow up. We're going into a wrap up on Wednesday. And the oddly weird good news this year is we don't have to rush through wrap up. So if Wednesday's wrap up starts to look kind of wonky, we won't meet Thursday. We'll come back and meet the following week so people can have more time. So I guess what I'm saying to you as the budget chairman, I've got until Jonesy, how long enough? Till the end of June. So we've got time. So please don't feel rushed or anxious. Like, we're going to take as much time as we need to make sure everybody's comfortable. And based on what I've heard from members of the council, if things start changing in the budget, we need to make sure that we do it appropriately so that, one, we can communicate to the administration what we're attempting to do. Two, it passes muster with the comptroller, that whatever we're going to do. And three, that we're able to serve notice to the public that we're going to do some of those things. So please don't feel anxious or rushed, but please start getting, excuse me, prepared for very specific things that you want to do. And then I think there was one more. Councilman Smiley, like, great to the point. So JB sent an email today through his staff member, like, basically serving notice. This is one of the things that's coming. You don't have to put it in resolution form, but that's fine. Works for me. Thank you. Yeah, it works for me. But we're going to take that up first. But those are the things I'd like to start getting into. And what's going to have to probably work differently than years past. You're welcome to do it whichever way you want, but it's either we have to have a balanced budget. So based on what I'm seeing, I think the easiest thing to do, and this is what I'm saying, don't get anxious that you're going to get run over, is to see what everything that is on the table from everyone. Because I don't think we're going to be able to go, I want this, I'm going to cut that. I want this, this, and this, so I'm going to add that with a tax increase. I think it's going to be easier for us to kind of get it all out on the table, start to whittle away or add to it or whatnot, and then decide how we're going to pay for it, probably as a group. It would be really great if you could find some cuts, if so it's not all add, but I know that's difficult, but we're going to have to figure out how to reconcile this thing to have a balanced budget. And that's my biggest fear, is that we get down to the end of July and we have all this stuff on the table, and we, as a council, haven't really figured out a plan on how to pay for it. In June. Did I say June? Yeah. Well, if we go, I don't want to, but yes, I mean, the last thing I want to do is pass the continuation budget. So we'll talk more about that as we get into wrap up. But I guess my point is it's time to start turning your attention to the very specific things that are very important to you as a member that you would like to see adopted into this coming year's budget, and then start to consider ways in which we are going to pay for those initiatives if they do not fit in to the flat rate, flat proposal of the mayor. Like I said, you're either gonna have to cut it from somewhere or add it from somewhere. So just please be thinking about those things. With that, hi, welcome back. If you give us your name and title for the record, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Lauren Kennedy, Executive Director at the Urban Art Commission. I believe you all wanted to talk about temporary projects and maintenance plans. I also got a question about confirming what was in the FY24 project pipeline, so that is what is on your screen. After the last budget meeting, I did share a spreadsheet with the ongoing maintenance projects that we're addressing, but I'm happy to, I don't know if there were specific questions that we wanted to start with, or if you wanted me to just speak about some of the projects that we're working on now. I can report that the banners that were a concern in both Whitehaven and Raleigh have been taken down.
I think let's just go through your presentation quickly, unless somebody had some. Do you have something, Jim?
Mm-hmm. So the banners are, as I mentioned the last time I was here, and I believe there's been some follow-up from the Office of Planning and Development about this as well. All of those street pole banners are, it's a program that you rent the poles through MLGNW. I cannot speak to why that is a process, but I just know that it is and has been for a very long time. I know that I spoke with Director Boleyn last week, I believe, about maybe trying to help find the right person at MLGNW. I think we have a contact.
His name is Doug McGowan.
Also that. but those projects in Whitehaven and Raleigh were through both demonstration projects coming out of the Memphis 3.0 plan. And so the poles had been rented through the city of Memphis for 2 years, and UAC helped to facilitate the artwork for the banners. So as soon as I know that the state of the banners was brought to the attention of Susanna Barton in planning and development, she reached out to us immediately to help us get things coordinated for those to come down. I will say that that is the only time we have done a project like that through the Urban Art Commission. I don't believe that planning and development, without not trying to speak for them, I don't believe they're planning to use that approach again. But I know that the desire to have something more permanent is something that is really of interest. We actually, for Cherokee Heights, and we'll be doing the same thing for South Memphis, for Soulsville coming up, have installed more permanent, I don't know what the appropriate term is, but we've been calling them street sign toppers. But where you have a pole at an intersection indicating the streets, right underneath that we've installed another similar but differently colored piece of metal that has the neighborhood name slogan as incorporated into the design of a larger scale sculpture for both neighborhoods. I would recommend those kinds of approaches or applications of public art in the future, as opposed to the poles, which were always intended to be temporary. And maybe a point of clarification is just that generally speaking, UAC is not facilitating temporary projects through city funding. Our funding is really coming out of the capital improvement budget, and so we're really pursuing permanent projects out of that funding. This was those two instances were actually funded through the Planning and Development Division.
Chair, thank you. And I'm happy for those subsequent projects, but that is not helping the fact that the community was excited about it. We got on board with the 2.3.0, the accelerate, everything that the administration has brought out. We were champions and very disappointed when the flags were tattered and worn and nobody changed them. And then you said, okay, well, I'm just gonna take them down. No one mentioned about taking them down prior to us saying, can you change them out because they're tattered and torn. Now, if that was the plan, that was the plan. But if there was going to be something else done that was more permanent somewhere else, I think that should have been the consideration for those two locations who were to get a deeper dive. Now we're just left without anything. So, and I'm not directing this passion towards you, but I think everybody involved needs to consider that, because we're still in the process of proving 3.0 and Accelerate Memphis and all these wonderful projects. There's a lot to be left desired in terms of the afterthought, the maintenance part of a lot of things that happen. And I've shared this. It's not something I'm just saying public. I've shared this also with divisions and leaderships, that when we're planning these projects, let's think them all the way out in terms of maintenance, in terms of the next steps, and communicating that to the community, because that wasn't the thought. We were expecting them to be installed and to be maintained, because when you go through this whole process of finding artists and the community voting, and you have Raleigh and what it means and all of these different symbols that, that's there, I think it's very disheartening to the community when it's just left. So if there's a way to circle back and whatever permanent things you're doing to replace those in those areas is what I would recommend.
Yes,
and that
sir.
would be Whitehaven and Raleigh.
East Memphis ain't no problem. But you know what? We just found out they were gonna take those doggone things down. Y'all should have let us all know. You should have let the community and everybody else know that they were gonna be coming down. But we really just found out that you're gonna take them down. We just found out that they're being rented. We just found out all those things. That's why I said, I was really appalled when I saw that truck the other day taking them signs down. Okay? I ain't never liked the sign because they're too small. Should have been, let me finish the whole, I'm talking. I'm kind of pissed at you over there, and the rest of them, and I'm gonna call Doug myself. I'll take care of that one, okay? But kind of pissed me off. Saw them trucks, and you know, and everybody, what are they doing? Taking my signs down. And then, like I said, we really didn't know that. Did you know, Miss Robinson? Okay? We worked hard. You worked hard, I put it that way, to get the sign. But you know, they decided to take them down and then we're gonna say nothing to us if you wouldn't have come up here and said, hey, that's what's gonna happen. That was what, last week? Okay? But we're gonna deal with it. You don't have to answer the question or anything else. We're gonna deal with Councilwoman Robinson. Okay, cause Whitehaven, I won't look just like East damn Memphis. Because I bet they ain't gonna take them down. They're not gonna do that, and the little things on the street, East Memphis been had that too. Okay? When you go on them corners, I want some on my corners. Okay? So we gonna, when everybody talking about wish list, we gonna wish on what I want in Whitehaven and out there in Raleigh and all the rest, because other than that, y'all can forget about the wish list if we don't get that. I'm being honest, okay? And I do think I can carry 7 votes on that one, okay? Because we kind of tired too, you know. But like I said, when you ride, and I wrote, hey, I left the doctor, and you know, and all what I saw really kind of pissed me off. That's why my son, hey, I went way out there, but I saw all these things, and I said, hell, and I thought about it. And I'm glad you're here today. I said, but they took mine down. Kind of pissed me off. Understand, Chair? Yes, sir. All right, I want to meet with you, and we're going to meet with the mayor, all the rest of them, and Doug. I want you to tell them, hey, we're going to have a group we need to meet, okay? Because before this budget is up, hey, we're going to have Raleigh taking care of certain things that we ain't asking for much, Whitehaven and all the rest of them. And then, hey, everybody else can get whatever they want afterwards. But we ain't giving them nothing. Okay? I'm through, but it really pissed me off.
Thank you, Councilman Ford. Yeah, I think Councilman Ford brings up a really good point, which is twofold. One is rotating. Like, so use the snowflakes, for instance, like they've always gone down Poplar, and I think it was Commissioner Milton finally got some down in South Memphis, right? So those have to go up, come down. That requires coordination. Well, I know, but my point is that to take a look at an ongoing program identified by the Memphis 3.0, and it could be banners celebrating whatever it is, neighborhood-specific things. This seemingly is a low-hanging fruit. Again, it costs money, but it can't be that much. Do we know what we rented the light poles from MLGW for? I mean, I think it's $1.
Bear with me a moment, I can.
Yeah. And that's one big thing, which is neighborhood-centric art that can rotate, that's low-hanging fruit, that can be refreshed and rotated in and out. And that should be very easy to do. And you've got so many community groups that could participate in crowdsourcing. I mean, you could take something from one of the Fraser School District's student art programs and hang that art up in these banners for a spring, right? Like the zoo used to do. And then secondly, which is I think is the other big piece of today, and I'm brought Doug's name up jokingly, but kind of serious, which is one of the reasons that Doug is over there is to draw them back closer to being more cooperative. And installing art in neighborhoods shouldn't require significant lease issues and problems with MLGW. Should be simply, easy. And then the second thing is what more you cover, and Arts Memphis hopefully can help with supporting some of these programs, especially in lower income neighborhoods, because little things can go a long way. Or the more permanent installations in which we've got funds that can go and either renew them, restore them, refresh them, and keep them refreshed, right? Like we're about to go into, or start over and just repaint them and start a whole new mural, whatever that looks like. So I think that's the big thing, where how often we're going back to do the refresh on certain projects, right? We rebuilt the Chiska in 2013. We started that mural. I think had just gotten painted right across on the facade of Pontotoc right then, and I don't know that it got refreshed for, yeah. And that's the stuff I think where all across the city we're worried about, that we do these great installations and then you don't have the funding, or Arts Memphis doesn't come in and match us 4 years or 3 years down the road to just refresh it a little bit. And it loses its, it goes from vibrant and activating to when was this done? So I think those two are the big thematic things, but on the rotating art, like that's seemingly low-hanging fruit with just coordination between, like Councilman Ford said, the mayor's office, MLGW, engineering, and somebody, or public works, and somebody that has an arts background that can say, these are the things that we can do. And so I think there is a place for you guys to have a voice in that by coordinating with your contacts through Arts Memphis and the school system and arranging and finding out what that artwork could be to tell that story in those neighborhoods. So
I need to know how much was the rental?
So there's a $100 application fee, and then $75 for the first month's rent on one pole, $20 after that.
that should be $1 for the whole time.
According to how many poles
Yes.
they're gonna put it on.
And I would understand that if the MLGW route lost revenue from another source, but it's not. So that's where I think Doug will be able to tell us whether or not there's a state law or some issue. I know Manny and I have talked about intersections and why our poles are next to each other.
Yes, sir. We'll be happy to take a look at that leasing arrangement. And just in general, I think the purpose of the flags were to be temporary for a couple of years, but I understand what I'm hearing now is people would like to see some things activated in their neighborhoods, and we'll be happy to have more conversation with our Arts Commission and get those kinds of things accomplished.
You got Elvis President Enterprise right there on Elvis President, and now you had a little sign up there, and little thing where they could at least see something coming down Elvis President. Now you took it down. Now you don't have anything.
Yeah, and to Councilman Ford's point, I hear you, and that's my point. Is I don't think the government. I think the government has to lay the pathway to say, like Mighty Lights, like you had a private entity use a massive government tool, and then a nonprofit had it, and now when it was ready and stable, handed it off to the DMC. There are so many nonprofits that operate in these neighborhoods, and people that are looking to figure out, how do I help and do more to beautify? This is such a low cost entry for some of those nonprofits to partner with other matching funds. Just again, to me, it seems like low-hanging fruit, so long as the government can help streamline this is how you're going to do it, and this is how long it's going to stay, and this is the cost, and you can sponsor Elvis Presley Boulevard for 1 year, and this is whatever. But I'll let you guys spitball that, but I think you've got the direction the council wants to go.
Yeah, Chair, one
Yes,
other
ma'am.
thing that is an opportunity, I think, too, when we're doing these projects, like the initiatives like the Town Center or what's fixing to happen in Whitehaven, when there's public investment in the communities, the wayfinding signs are necessary. I've talked about that, especially for the Town Center. When we went back, I had a meeting to talk about, how do you come behind? I think you were in that meeting, and when you do a debriefing meeting, okay, we did a wonderful project and we've had it for a while. Here are some things that the community has noticed and that we noticed that moving forward in the next initiative, you want to consider this. So maintenance, a restroom, who's in charge of what, what's the maintenance on this? But one small thing was wayfinding signs. And so when you drive on the property, where to go, where to park, that type of thing. And that can be used as an art as well. Because I know Yvonne Bobo's sculptures are there, but to have had maybe some of that public art included in the wayfinding signs adds beautification and art as well, and it's permanent. So combining those opportunities, I think, would help too. And it's like Chairman said, it's low hanging fruit to be able to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. It's yeah, it's going to be a longer conversation, but again, I think the simplest thing to say, it's amazing the little things can do, especially to neighborhoods. And I know I'm probably talking out of school to my colleagues here, but you go into certain neighborhoods and it's amazing what like the little things can do for neighborhood pride and just to demonstrate that there's opportunity and there's beauty in these neighborhoods. And so, you know, you'd hate to give them something and then have it be tattered and torn 2 years later. It's almost worse than putting it up in the first place. So, and I know you understand that.
Sure, I mean, this is what our work is about, and you know, we're not in a position to facilitate a conversation between MLG&W and the city. We would be in a position to facilitate artist selection, help refine the art. We really were there to lead the design effort on the signs, but I very much hear everything that you've said.
We're going to get you a place at the table.
I'd be happy to participate. Yes, and if you all would be interested in hearing more about some of the projects that we have teed up for FY24 or anything that we're working on now, I'd be happy to share any of that. But we have.
You want to run through them?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
So we're planning for a $100,000 sculpture project for the historic Melrose Building in partnership with the Housing Community Development Office to be commissioned in the next year, as well as a new mural for the Lester Community Center as they get a new facility as part of the Accelerate Memphis program. The Neighborhood Art Initiative is something that we've included twice now in previous fiscal years, but this is kind of a different process for us where we're actually inviting applications from neighborhood organizations and leaders to apply for public art funds for their communities. We will be putting out a call for applications later this year, and we'll very much lean on you all to help share that with your constituencies, because we would really love to see folks from your different neighborhoods applying for that.
Quick question for you. So the Neighborhood Art Initiative, is there like a flyer that we can put out, say?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we're gonna get that?
It's gonna go out in August, the next round of applications. We're currently working on 4 neighborhoods, a mural in Westwood, a mural at the Douglas Community Center, and then bus shelter enhancements for both Hickory Hill and Mallory Heights as part of the current program. And so we're actually gathering feedback from those neighborhood partners now to help refine the application process for the fall, and that'll be kicking off in August. And then contingency and project management fees are things that are always included as part of that CIP allocation. And all of these are in addition to, I think it's 15 plus projects that we have in process right now. We have installations happening between, now in the fall at the Douglas Community Center, that mural in Westwood that I mentioned, Cordova Library, Orange Mound Park, John F. Kennedy Park, Ellie Brown Park, and as well as installations in a number of library branches across the city of studio work that is purchased from local artists for display in public buildings. A lot of the art that you see on the walls in City Hall is part of that collection. So we're expanding that and focusing on neighborhood library branches. I already mentioned the upcoming projects at Hickory Hill and Mallory Heights. We also have something going in at the Ed Rice Community Center with their new building, and calls to artists out right now for Jesse Turner Park and the Memphis Sports and Event Center at Liberty Park. And of course, I forgot to mention your sculpture at the YMCA, which is, I think, going to be installed this summer.
On the murals, does that include funding or plan to go back and touch them up after a certain period of time? Because they will need refresh after a while. And in the parks, who's in charge of wayfinding signs? Would that be your area? No.
No, that would be on the division. We have a internal signs and markings team where we can make those signs.
But would there be able to be some type of collab potentially, or talk about that to see what that looks like?
For
parks,
we can explore that. I don't know that we've done that. I don't know that we've done it, so I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but we can explore it.
Okay. All right. But the mural, and because like the mural that's at the one on that back wall, it never was finished. So I wanted to know the one where the white on Scheibler.
It was finished?
the part down, when you started where the police were and they said stop and they left it, and then Joseph went down on the other end. He finished that end, but that just was left. So there's a big gap.
Okay.
So if I was thinking they were going to come back and, pardon me?
I think we were told we
it's
couldn't
not.
paint that close to the entrance.
Pardon me?
I think we were told we couldn't paint close to the entrance for the body shop. It's a
Right,
rickety
but
body
he had
shop.
already started and he just stopped. So if they could put that back, restore that back, and because he finished the other end. But if you all could answer if there's a maintenance plan in place for the murals that are being put up.
Yes, ma'am. So the city annually allocates about $35,000 to maintain the city's public art collection, which is over 120 plus pieces around the city. $35,000 is not enough to actively maintain all of them. So actually in the last 3 years, we've committed new CIP money in past fiscal years to support going back and doing some more significant maintenance needs. So we've been working from $185,000 CIP allocation to go back and address a number of backlog issues.
Okay, so I do think it's important, colleagues, if we're going to do public art and we're going to do it well and right, that we're going to have to put some more money there in order for us to maintain them, or we need to look at something that's not, Now, like I said before, the one at McLean, that sculpture, the piece that in front of the housing project right there, those homes, that metal piece, there's very little maintenance for that, and it looks really nice.
That's
So
because her work is super duper expensive.
What is?
Is it an Yvonne Bobo piece?
I believe what Councilwoman Logan is talking about is actually a piece by Jim Wallace.
Yeah, okay. It's also not super cheap.
It's expensive. It's just a big old piece of
sculpture. Does generally it is more expensive
rusty
than
metal,
murals.
but it's beautiful. I mean, it's just it can rain. I mean, it seems like the rust. If it rains, it gets more rusty. It's pretty. But anyway, so we have to use something like that. I was just mentioning, whereas opposed to the paintings where you have to go touch up paint and stuff, but those abstract metal looking things look good. Like even Yvonne's is really nice, and it's in the, something that's practical that you don't have to go and redo. If we don't have the funding to maintain them, let's switch over to doing something like that. It's just my thought. We have to just be, mindful of the budget. Great work. Just need that maintenance piece there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, colleagues, we're going to wrap up. Thank you for coming today.